Hello everybody and welcome to another installment on what feels like the never-ending project of my Pantera. Today I'm going to explain to you why it now has a completely different bonnet. I'm going to talk about a mysterious brake issue and try and diagnose what's going on there. We're going to use a bicycle inner tube to test for another potentially really big issue, and finally we are going to fit the engine. Before we get started, I just want to thank Nick, a viewer who makes incredible automotive art. And as you can see, he has made a print of my very own Pantera. I absolutely love it. Honestly, this thing is unreal. It uses 100% cotton paper, and the pigments, the paint, is just so vivid. And that's because it uses something very similar to real car paints. So it sits on top of the paper rather than being absorbed to give it a real punch. He's made a limited series of these in 3 different sizes and is offering number 27 viewers a 10% discount. I'll put the links and all the information in the video description, so do go and have a look. And thank you so much, Nick. I really do love it. Unsurprisingly, since I saw you last, I've had more than a few issues. Let's start with all my lovely brake lines that I did previously. We filled the system, and immediately I noticed that there was 2 leaks coming out. One was my fault really, and a couple of people pointed out in the other video, thank you for that, that this joint that I'd used for one of the brake lines is not MOT approved, and I don't know why, but you're not supposed to use it for that. And lo and behold, it was actually leaking as well. So I have since bought a load of these. So anyway, that's the first thing I've got to do. Secondly, there was a leak from this brake distribution block, which was just under the brake master cylinder. Bizarrely, it was leaking from this. And this is essentially a switch designed so that if you lose pressure on either circuit, this will trigger and you'll get a light on the dash. And I was quite surprised, but I ordered another switch thinking, well, it's just, you know, it's just gone. And when I had a look inside the distribution block, I realized that it was empty. So now that's really odd because obviously it's not supposed to be empty. It's supposed to have a little sliding cylinder that will trigger that switch. The reason why it was leaking is, and because it's empty, fluid was getting on there and then going through the switch. Now you can't get this particular type of block. You can get similar blocks, but they're not quite the same, and I'd have to redo half the brake lines there to fit them, and I didn't want to do that. Luckily, one of the guys from the Pantera Club milled me one of these. He had the correct O-rings, so we'll be able to pop that in there and then put that back in the system and make it go. So those are the next couple of tasks that I've got to get to grips with. So first thing to do is to just pop this back in there. Okay. So I have to, I think it's called reanalyze. It's basically soften up this copper ring that sealed one of the junctions on that distribution block. So you just have to get it red hot and then let it cool so that it's then softened again and ready to be screwed back into place. Everything is now back in place, and I've replaced the offending junction as well. And we've already tested it and we've encountered a few problems. The back of the car, the fluid went there, it's all done, it's all okay. At the front, there was nothing going to the calipers and I couldn't quite work it out. So I undid a few of the lines to see where the fluid was getting to. When I got to the brake bias valve and I took off the inlet, there was fluid going in, but nothing coming out. So clearly there is a problem with this. So I bypassed it using a T-piece, and my handsome assistant, we all know why he's handsome, he's my dad.
Hello everybody.
He's visiting for a while, so he's going to give me a quick push on the pedal a few times. I'm going to try and bleed the front brakes as well, so fingers crossed. But so far, none of the joints that I've done are leaking, so that's good news. Well, believe it or not, it's now 3 weeks later and the brakes are still driving me absolutely nuts. Managed to get fluid to those front brakes and that was all okay. Then I went on to try and bleed the system. And I mean, I bled it over and over, but the pedal travel is still way too long. I was so desperate, I ended up getting a dedicated American pressure bleeding system that worked with that Ford master cylinder. so that I could be sure there was no more air in the system. And indeed, it comes out really clean, and I've bled them over and over and over. But that pedal is still soft. I've tried to adjust it at the pedal itself, and I haven't been able to for various reasons I won't go into now, but I think the problem is between the linkage and the master cylinder. I have a mate who's coming down in 2 to 3 weeks to help me fit the engine, and I'm going to get him to have a look with me because I just haven't been able to figure out exactly what's wrong. In the meantime, let me update you on what's been going on at the back of the car. In the last video, you may remember that these heating pipes here, they had a lot of rust inside them, so I flushed them out with a hose thinking, okay, great, just do that, make sure it's clear, the system's going through and that's okay. But lots of you said, no, you need to pressure test them to make sure that they don't have any holes in them. Because apparently lots do. Now these go through the whole of the chassis and they are welded in as well, so they are a real pain to change. So if you need to change them, let's hope not, then now is the time to do it. But the problem is, how do you pressure test them? I know that you can buy pressure testers and so on for a few £100. The cheap ones are crap. But I ended up figuring out that I could cut a tyre in a tube, put both ends over them, then blow it up. Problem was that that inner tube would just swell up like a balloon and it wouldn't go up to sort of high enough pressure that I was happy it was working as a tester. So I had to end up reinforcing the sides of it. In the end though, I did that, got the pressure up to about 15 PSI I think, which is, I think 20 or 18 is the limit that the system can hold. So I got it up to 15, left it overnight, came back, tested it, pressure was the same. So finally, at least, I was happy that that means that these pipes are both okay. The last few jobs though have been a bit demoralizing, so for the next one I decided to do something satisfying and which should be relatively easy. So I put that front grille back on the car, and I just, you know, it's just a little thing that it's a little bit of a step forward, because everything I'm trying to do at the moment, it just feels like a step back, which brings me on to the next issue. These lovely shiny ceramic coated headers I got when I was in the States through my mate Mike Drew. They were at the time supposed to be quite good and the only ones that had a decent fit. But I've been warned that someone who bought exactly the same ones has had a real problem and even had to return them. So I tried to dry fit these onto the engine, and lo and behold, they don't actually fit. So the problem is that the holes on the flange that goes in, 3 of them on one side, I think, and 4 on the other, they're just slightly off. And I mean, I could see it even looking through the hole. It's not just that the screw was difficult to get in place. They just weren't quite right. So I've marked off the bits that need to be taken off, and I'm just going to pop outside, do a bit of filing off to just bring them out, and then see if at least I can make these flanges fit. So the good news is that that really didn't take very long, and I've now managed to get all the bolts through. The bad news is that it's kind of made me worry a little bit about the general quality of the rest of it. How's it going to line up? So if even the bolt holes weren't quite right, the way they were drilled, what's the likelihood that the angle of these is going to work? Now, the other chap who I heard had a problem with them, he ended up returning them because these were so far off, they were actually fouling the chassis. Now, I won't know that until I get the engine in place. So I'm just gonna have to take this off, fit the engine, try, and just hope against hope that somehow we can get them to work, because you can't find, at the moment, you can't find anything else. Now, these were from PIM Motorsports, which, as I said, is the same place with the other chap is having the problems with. I can't really return them because I bought them in the US, shipped them over here. I've now ground out the holes on the sides as well, but it's going to be a bit of an issue because you can't get original ones, or if you can, they are absurdly expensive. And there's nothing else available that's any better than this. So somehow or other, I'm going to have to get this to work. It's finally time to drop in the engine. So I have a couple of Pantera friends, Richard and Andy, who are going to come down and help me. And this leads us on to yet another surprise that the Pantera came with. Richard is bringing down a completely new bonnet. Let me explain why that is necessary. So this is the old bonnet, and at first glance it actually looks very nice, and indeed it is. The guys who painted the car did a great job with it, but underneath there are some serious issues. Let me just turn it around so I can show you what the problem is. So when Jim had this car, he decided to put some extra vents in the front. The radiator sits just here, and it helps to cool an engine which is notoriously a bit finicky in the Pantera. The problem is that when they did that, they cut out the front twice. I think he either decided on a different size of vents. So there was one bigger hole, which then had another steel panel welded in, and then the vents welded into that panel. So there was a lot of welding that went on top of which this spider had to be cut to make room for the vents, weakening the whole bonnet. So you can see why it would have warped. Now, when I got the car back to the guys who painted it originally, I mean, they did a brilliant job, but obviously with this, I said just fill it up, because what was happening is behind the vents, there was so much filler that it was cracking. So I said, just put a panel back in and let's see if we can make it work. But they couldn't, because it's all so badly warped. You can see here the gap between the actual frame and the bonnet itself, that the only way to make it look good from the outside was to use a huge amount of filler. The filler's all on the outside. This is how badly bowed and warped the bonnet is inside. So basically it was unusable. I was going to just keep on using it as far as I could until I found a new bonnet, but luckily Richard had a spare. These are really hard to find and very expensive. Now, it is a black satin wrap at the moment. Underneath there is a matte black paint, but it was so hard to keep clean that he decided to wrap it instead. Now, the original idea was that I'd take it back to my paint shop and get it done the same colour as the car, but do you know what? Seeing it like this, I'm not 100% sure about that. Certainly, I might wait to do that until a later stage, and initially I might just go with it as it is. With this wrap, I can always take it in later to be painted anyway, but let me know what you think. Should I leave it like this, or should I do it body colour as it used to be? Now, if any of you want this as an ornament of some kind to hang up in your garage, stick a picture on it, draw on it, do whatever you want, then please let me know. It's pretty much valueless as it is as a Pantera bonnet. It looks fine, but obviously there's a load of filler in there. But if any of you want it, please send me an email. You'd have to come and collect from North Oxfordshire, where I live, but I'm happy to give it away if anyone wants it. To get the engine in, the first thing we needed to do was to get the car in the right position. We soon realised that the front legs of the crane weren't going to clear the rear of the wishbones going underneath the car. So we had to jack it up, put some wooden blocks underneath, and then we were ready to try again. It eventually became obvious that my crane just wasn't long enough, so we decided to modify the engine plate to move it further back and give it just a few centimetres more reach. The angle is crucial, and you can see here what a tight fit the clearance is between that front pulley and the top of the bulkhead. We're almost there now, but we can't quite get the rear gearbox mount to clear enough to get the engine laid down. So the engine is in, and honestly, it was a difficult slog doing it. I've done it twice now, and because the whole assembly is so long, that engine's so heavy, getting it in place is hard. Also, my crane that we had was probably just a little bit too short, really, for what we needed. But it was difficult. And a couple of times, you know, Richard's a northerner, so he's quite feisty, and I'm Italian, so I've got a quick temper. So there was a little bit of shouting that went on, but it was all pretty good-natured. Now it's in place. I mean, to get it in, we even had to remove the gearbox mounts from the gearbox itself, which is not normally the way you do it, but it seemed to be the only way it was going to go in. So Thing is, now it is in, the distributor is fouling against the firewall, which is not ideal, but I'm sure we can twist it round or do something. I don't know. It's something, at the moment, I've just cut a little chunk out of the extra heat shielding that I had put in. All the same, it really does feel like a major step forward. Next steps are to see if there's any way of making these headers work. They do mate up to the engine, but I've already seen that the angle at which the exhausts come off this flange is wrong. So there's going to have to be some cutting and welding there. Plus, of course, got to connect up everything on the engine, which is going to be quite a big task in itself. And then hopefully, for the next video at least, we will be able to crank it up. I can't wait. Thank you so much for watching, and see you for the next one.